Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, creating laundry rooms with improved storage, workspace, and everyday function for one of the home's most used spaces. Inspiration at callmosby.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. For many parents in Illinois, time is running out to get the specialized care they need for their young children with developmental disabilities. They are waiting to get their kids into a state program called Early Intervention, which is open only to kids under the age of 3. But a recent investigation has found that parents and their kids are losing out on precious time, waiting months or even longer to get started in the program. Each day they wait is a day their child isn't getting specialized care, running down a clock that puts them closer to becoming ineligible for that care. Many states, including Missouri, have similar publicly funded programs, but the Early Intervention program in Illinois is facing real challenges. That goes beyond the parents and kids involved. In recent years, hundreds of therapists have left the program, and more could be following. To talk about what's going on with the Early Intervention program in Illinois and why it's raising alarm from both parents and providers, I'm joined by Meredith Newman. She's an investigative reporter with the Illinois Answers Project. Meredith, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So Meredith, you and Madison Hopkins published a detailed report earlier this month on this program. It's titled Early Intervention Therapies Help Kids, but Illinois Pays Providers Less Than Other States, Stalling Access. Now, you found reasons for serious concern, including that the percentage of Illinois families waiting for early intervention has doubled. And you also identified dozens of families who reported long wait times for this program, as long as 6 to 17 months. Your report describes early intervention in Illinois, Meredith, as, quote, little known. So how did it come to your attention?
Yeah, great question. I have been interested in writing about childcare and early childhood development here in Illinois. And it was kind of the classic thing that happens when you talk to a lot of folks. You get a lot of good ideas. And I was working on a different story just related to childcare costs. And again, I was talking to childcare providers or parents themselves that, you know, when you ask, is there anything else that I should look into, early intervention kept popping up. And what surprised me, like you had mentioned earlier, was just the ticking clock element. And it's such an important service for so many families, yet many feel like they're running out of time. So it felt like a good story to look into.
Mm-hmm. And that service, what does being in this program provide service-wise?
It can really be everything under the sun, just depending on the kiddo. It could be babies born in the NICU getting early services. It could be a toddler that just hasn't nailed walking yet, or maybe parents and a physician have potentially noticed signs of autism, so some speech and developmental therapy. So it can really just depend on the toddler and kind of what they're going through. But the most popular services are speech therapy, which can, help with talking, but also feeding, physical therapy, and developmental therapy, which is kind of everything under the sun.
Mm-hmm. Now, you interviewed an Illinois dad named Caleb Taylor, who waited 7 months for an evaluation for his 2-year-old daughter. And his daughter was eventually diagnosed with autism, but she only got a couple of months of therapy before she aged out of the program. What stood out to you about that family's case?
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Taylor, he and his partner kind of did everything right, which is why it stood out to me. At their daughter's 2-year checkup with their pediatrician, the pediatrician noticed that she wasn't yet talking and decided to refer the family to early intervention. And it took months and months and months for the family to even get a call back to get their child evaluated. And Caleb Taylor has a background in tenants' right organizing. And so definitely has a persistent character. And so after leaving countless voicemails, he decided just to show up to the office one day since they weren't returning his call. And so he kind of slips in through security, shows up to the office. They were very surprised to see him there. But then once he said why, they were even more surprised to hear that they were waiting 7 months. And so by the time that his daughter got evaluated, she was maybe 2 years and 7 months or so, if not a little older. And so she was only able to really qualify for about 3 months or so of actual therapies because of a cutoff at age 3.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we go back to 2018, Meredith, there were virtually no families waiting to receive their initial evaluation in Illinois. Then if we come to today, it's at nearly 9%. What changed?
A lot of things. The pandemic, like most things, was really thrown for a loop in terms of early intervention. But I think if you talk to a lot of providers and therapists who are providing these services through early intervention, it's really an issue of supply and demand. And you'll see that hundreds of therapists were leaving each year, but the number of children that were being referred was growing and growing and growing. And so as a result, families are going to have to wait in terms of even getting evaluated to be a part of the program. And then also they're waiting once they are evaluated and accepted to get those therapies that can be time critical.
Mm-hmm. Now, part of the problem you report is the reliance on telehealth. So these are virtual appointments, and they've elicited different reactions from the provider side and the family side. So some say that it's helpful. Others do not see it that way at all. So what are the different sides to this issue about the way the service is delivered?
Sure. It was really, when I talked to providers, many were enthusiastic because in Illinois, therapists aren't reimbursed for travel or mileage. If a family cancels, there's no fee, so they get nothing. And so there's a lot of hidden costs with therapists in terms of just working day to day. And so telehealth allows them to not travel, eliminate those costs, but also potentially to add more to their calendar or even work with families that might be outside of their area because they just won't be able to make it to an appointment. And so therapists really love it. For families, as you can imagine, corralling a 2-year-old in front of a computer screen can be a little tough, let alone kind of guiding them through therapies. So for families, for the most part, it was a pretty frustrating experience. Yeah, there might have been some scheduling ease with telehealth, but for a lot of parents, they really missed the in-person element of having a therapist guide them. Because something that several families remarked to me, especially those who had either received a diagnosis of autism or were kind of on that road to that diagnosis, they were kind of entering this new world, this new vocabulary, a lot of therapies, a lot of appointments. And so they were very overwhelmed. And so just adding one more element of technology was quite difficult.
Mm-hmm. Were there any families or therapists who said that telehealth was the right method for them?
Definitely for therapists. In terms of families, yes, there was one family that I spoke to that lived in central Illinois at the time, and Erica Reffett was the mom's name, and she was waiting a long time, very much part of those families that were waiting. And when she was offered telehealth, she very much was like, I guess I'll take it. What else do I have? And she said something interesting to me where she said, it actually worked out really great. And she and her son became much closer with the therapist that they were working with virtually, opposed to the therapist that was coming into their home. And so I thought that was a very interesting comparison. And for that family, it worked out great. They're still in touch with the therapist and had a great experience. So yeah, there's definitely some positive experiences out there for the most part.
Yeah. You had a chance to speak with a retired provider in Alton. Her name is Mary Vaughn, and Mary said that there was, quote, greater need for the program in rural parts of southern Illinois. What is notable about the situation that's facing families in these parts of Illinois state?
Yeah, two things come to mind. It won't be surprising for folks to hear, just the general lack of access to medical care in terms of healthcare professionals being located in the area or even having access to a local hospital. And so as a result, there's just not that many physical therapists, developmental therapists, or speech therapists in that region. But also in terms of telehealth, just going back to that for a minute, something that she remarked to me is that she personally didn't find it helpful unless there was another provider in the family's home, if Mary herself was virtual. But she also mentioned, there's a lot of internet connection issues still for some families in the Alton area and in other parts of southern Illinois. So it didn't work. It would be even more frustrating to get a bad signal and not being able to continue. So those are the two kind of elements that came to mind.
Something you have mentioned and that we've touched upon is that therapists are leaving, one reason because of the low pay. And your report includes a chart of some of those rates. And to provide an example here, in Missouri, a physical therapist would make $100, while in Illinois, they would make just $85. What would need to happen, Meredith, for those wages to increase in Illinois?
It all comes down to money, it comes to budget increases. And so that was something that advocates and providers were really pushing for at the most recent budget passing here in Illinois. And while there was a $15 million increase to the early intervention program, it's unclear as of now how much of that money will go to increasing provider rates. The state officials have said that it's going to go to kind of infrastructure and kind of building up the program and making sure other elements are working smoothly, but haven't really specified if that's going to be also including providers in their rates. Something Illinois has done a lot of research into early intervention and what needs to be improved, and something that jumped out at me during my reporting was there is an estimate of, I believe they would, in order to match other states' rates, Illinois would need to increase funding annually by $150 million, which is obviously a significant money. So I think some providers would say that Illinois has a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. You cited a survey conducted in May, of 230 early intervention therapists in Illinois. 40% said they are considering leaving the industry if changes are not made in the next year. You've just mentioned some of the ones that pertain to funds. What specific changes, though, are these therapists seeking?
Again, I think it really comes to salary increases or hourly rate increases, I should say. But there's also other elements that I've mentioned already. Travel reimbursement is a big one. Many of these providers are independent contractors, so they don't get sick days or PTO. If your job requires you to drive all over the state, but you don't get any mileage reimbursement, that can be really tough. There are other benefits that other states provide. Again, if a family cancels, there can be some cancellation fee. In Illinois, as of now, that doesn't exist. So I think providers are really looking for that rate increase, but also just to get the benefits that providers in other states are getting too.
Mm-hmm. You evaluated dozens of complaints from parents about this early intervention program. Do you have any guidance for families who might be thinking about submitting a complaint themselves? Do these complaints actually result in any positive fix?
It's hard to say generally. I will say I do think the state does respond and does investigate the complaints. And I did see a significant portion of these complaints being affirmed in the family's favor. I don't want to say it's a complete and total fix, but I do think some families did get services after filing these complaints. I write more about the process of how to file those complaints, so I would recommend checking out our story at illinoisanswers.org. But the complaints can be sent through the Illinois Department of Human Services. And I think for some families, it was even just it felt good to be able to do something at a time where they feel like they're just in limbo.
Mm-hmm. What questions are you still hoping to answer, Meredith?
That's a great question. I am interested in where that additional $15 million is going to go and the impact that it's going to have. I'm also curious to see what's working in other states. You mentioned Missouri having some benefits that Illinois doesn't. I'm curious to see what's working elsewhere and how it can be applied in Illinois. And then just other issues related to childcare and early childhood development at large.
Mm-hmm. Meredith Newman is an investigative reporter with the Illinois Answers Project. Meredith, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today.
Thank you.
This episode was produced by Danny Wissentowski.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Hi, I'm Laura Hamden, and my colleague Jessica Rogan and I are your daily hosts of the Gateway newsletter. We meet with the editors in the STLPR newsroom every weekday to bring you the top local stories of the day in a quick and easy 6-minute read by 6 a.m. In an age of overwhelm, it's a refreshing, thoughtful take on the news day, if we do say so ourselves. Fine-tune your daily news habit with the Gateway newsletter. Subscribe at stlpr.org/gateway.